All right, guys, ladies and gentlemen, we are live with Bryan Bouchard. So before we jump into it, I want to thank obviously everyone who's going to be tuning in with Brokering with CK, very, very first episode. We have an awesome guest today. Just to list off a few, of the things that we get to know before we dive into it. So first of all, Bryan recently retired in 2021, millionaire by 30. Yale market certified in the financial markets, savvy real estate and stock investor. What doesn't he do? Bryan, welcome. Thank you.
It's a nice intro, man. Thank you. I'm happy to be here, and I'm always down to talk about these types of topics on real estate, money, finance. So happy to be here, man. Thank you.
No, I appreciate it. So talk to us, Bryan. Who is Bryan? I'm naturally tell us a little bit more about yourself, how you even got into this position that you are today. Was finance always a passion of yours from a young kid, or what happened?
I was always a math guy. I was always a numbers guy. Like that was always a strength for me. Had
Right.
no idea where that would go. But that's where it kind of stemmed from. And finance is a great field to be in if you are a numbers person. But no, I didn't grow up. I didn't grow up from like an entrepreneurial family or like an investment focused family.
Right.
I grew up to trade time for money. So I went into the working world early. I know, out of college, didn't go the university route, went straight into working and, into a job that I ultimately did not like. And fortunately, I stumbled upon like real estate investing and Rich Dad Poor Dad and some of those financial books at a young age,
Right.
20 or 21. And that changed everything for me. That changed my mindset. That changed what I wanted to do, changed the way I thought about money and time and how it's earned. So that really got my brain thinking, and the path that I chose was real estate. So I got into real estate investing at 22. That's when I bought my first property, and it was a duplex. And I had like the buy and hold strategy for the first several years.
Right.
Career buying like duplexes and triplexes, and buying for cash flow for long term. I wasn't thinking about like BRRRR strategy and stuff like that back then.
Right.
It was just try to buy a property every year or two. Right. So that was kind of the beginning of it. And and then I kind of developed this interest in finance and banking and all that kind of stuff too. So I experimented in a few areas along the way. I did, financial advisory for one of the bigger firms, tried that out, had my reasons for not really liking that.
Right.
Restricted to products and things. I got my mortgage license when I was young, when I was about 24, and did that for a bit, and ultimately got it again, and I currently still broker. But eventually, like the real estate was what I stuck with for.
Right.
It's been 13 years now that I've been an investor. I've changed my strategy and developed my strategy over the years due to education. Now it's a little more like into the larger multifamily space, commercial space, value add.
Of course.
Quicker returns on your money type thing.
Yeah.
So I've stepped away from the buy and hold game.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it was an evolutionary process, and it was a lot of experimenting. It was not like I just knew exactly what I wanted to do when I was 20 and just went all in. A lot of experimenting, trials, failures. I quit my job. I played professional poker for a few years. That was a great time. I was, I always had my hands in like two or three things, like always.
Yeah.
As opposed to being an absolute specialist and going all in on one business. That was never my thing.
Right.
Real estate was always there since 2009.
Wow, so that's really early. Okay, so you mentioned a few things, because we're gonna dive into all that stuff, right? But you mentioned that what essentially got you started was you were able to dive into some of the more popular financial education books like the Rich Dad Poor Dads, right? What are some of the main lessons, would you say, that really stuck with you back then, actually got you into this kind of mindset or mind frame and carrying you forward until now?
Yeah, so some of the lessons in that book, particularly, which is what was the light bulb moment for me in Rich Dad Poor Dad. I mean, I think it's chapter 1. It's like the rich don't work for money,
Right.
And it goes into explaining that time for money trap and working by the hour for a salary versus how the rich make money. And that's investing in assets, businesses, and investments that grow in value, not in proportion to how much time you put into it. That was a major lesson. Of course, you need to build on that and find what suits you. And then also, like, Rich Dad Poor Dad is an accounting book, and there's a section in there talking about balance sheets, income statements, right? How the cash flows, between poor people, middle class, and rich.
Of course.
Most important lesson there is how rich people, where they put their money. They put their money into assets. The assets goes to the income column, and that's how they fund their lifestyle. All of their income goes into bigger projects that grow. The income from there is what pays and funds your lifestyle. So that was like a big shift. That was a big shift for me. And then another, big lesson and key takeaway that I still follow is like spending less than you earn and investing the difference. It's kind of like a millionaire next door strategy, and just always doing that. It's a common problem these days. It's like in and out, what comes in, what goes out. And when people get a pay raise or increase their income, their lifestyle goes up with it. And you can't escape that trap when, you're spending beyond your means, or even right at your means. You need to have some money left over to put into things that keep building.
Right. And you know what, that's a really, really good point. I find that could be even more difficult now, considering the times in the social media era that we're in, because you have access to seeing people's individuals' lives, right? Not knowing that they could, like you're seeing them now, not what they've put into 10, 15, 20 years, right? So you may think you are privileged to that same lifestyle, right? And then you play this kind of catch-up game where, like you said, now you're spending more than, what you're actually taking home, which obviously is a negative in any type of wealth creation aspect or trying to do for your life, right?
Of course, like the social media brings two bad things potentially, like comparison, which is, comparing your lifestyle to others, not knowing what their life is behind the scenes or their income behind the scenes or any of that stuff. And it's like, if they can have it, I can have it. And then what you just hit there was entitlement. It's just like feeling like they deserve it. And marketing these days says, get what you deserve or take what you deserve. There's all this like deserving stuff, but like you got to put the work in to deserve this stuff. I mean, you can't. That's entitlement, and it's not a good thing when it comes to money.
No, most definitely. So you hit the nail. You have the rich dad poor dad. A lightning bulb, lit up in your head, and now you're getting into real estate, right? You said early 20s, around 2009. So you're in the early 20s.
Yeah.
Right. So what were some of the few projects you got into, and how did you even get into them?
So once I realized that, real estate was a path I was going to do, I just dove into research on that. And Robert Kiyosaki, the author of that book, has a plethora of other ones that are a little more focused to real estate specifically. So I just dove into his whole library, read all of those ones, and then, branched out into stuff that's a little more Canadian specific, and learned about like mortgages and lending, and went to the bank to talk about, can I get approved for something like that? With the pre-approval, they gave me a number, and it's like, okay. Started shopping within that budget, knew I wanted to buy a longer term rental, thankfully. So my very first property was a duplex, and I lived in the upper unit, rented out the basement right off the bat. Nice. At 22. So, I was pre-approved at the time for, I think it was $350,000, and I spent $260. So I spent a lot lower than what I was approved for,
right? Which
would have meant, my living costs were affordable based on my income. And then you add a stream of rental income on top of that.
Right.
Now I was living very cheaply. I didn't go finance the expensive car or any of that kind of stuff. No other kinds of debt, just the mortgage.
Of course.
So I was able to still save a lot after buying that first property. Of course, I used the 5% down strategy, put the minimum down, which is $13,000. So it was pretty easy to get into a property for that much money. And then it went right into saving up for the next property. The next property, I did the same thing. I bought another primary residence. I think I had to put 10% that time because of my ratios. But I used that 5% down strategy 3 times, or I guess the insured strategy. I lived in the property all 3 times.
Yeah.
And I would, just turn my existing units into rentals and slowly build a little portfolio, cash flowing properties, and kept my living expenses low. Like that was a big key, as I was really focused on investments and growing my money. I just had a strong attention for that. I didn't care about the flashy items, even at the young age where things are really appealing. That's what really set me up to be where I am now. Is it was those decisions 10, 12 years ago that compounded. And it was just like getting started as soon as you're available, or as soon as you can. That was the key. Was I didn't know a lot about real estate. The books can teach you some things, but I didn't know about like managing tenants and what types of problems are going to come up, and leaking foundations and stuff. Like a lot of tough problems to solve for the first time, especially when you're young and naive.
Right. No, definitely. And just for those who are tuning in now and those who are going to be listening on the replay, right? What's so powerful about that, a lot of people don't know, right? When it comes to single family homes, even duplexes, you can get down as low as 5%, right? Once you start getting to triplex and fourplex, then you're required to put 10% down. But at real estate prices, like you say, if you're purchasing for 300 or 350, obviously that's not reasonable now considering the market that we're in. Like you're living pretty much free, right? Like you said, if you're able to rent out those other 2 or even 3 units if you're able to get a fourplex, right?
Yeah, I don't regret doing that at all. And I think it's like one of the most powerful strategies for those who are either younger or just starting out.
Right.
And I coach people one-on-one. And if they don't have any properties yet, it's always a conversation. What do you think about house hacking? I strongly recommend
Of
that's
course.
the way that you enter the market. And that's, living in one unit and renting out the rest.
Right.
And using that rental income, not to, live out a higher lifestyle, but to keep investing into, your portfolio. Super
For
powerful.
sure. Now, would you say is that what gave you the freedom or the flexibility? Because clearly you had a lot of maneuvering around in terms of your employment, right? Because you went from construction, if I remember correctly, and then professional poker, right? Was you already had a few properties at that time, right?
Yeah, when I left my construction job to play poker, I had three, and I was at a standstill at those three properties
Right.
for like 3 years. I played professional poker for 3 years,
Mhm.
and no claimed income. I couldn't get mortgages. I didn't know much about privates. I didn't want to explore privates. It wasn't even on my mind. So I just had that three property portfolio for a few years there. I was loving what I was doing, actively playing poker, way better than construction, but my real estate portfolio was at a standstill just from the lending perspective. And that points out the importance of, a lot of people have good T4 income and they can leverage that. The banks love it. The banks love that T4 income, and
Right.
you can use that to acquire some very good lending products on real estate. So
Mhm.
I wouldn't be so quick to quit your job in many cases, even if you're not loving it. At least max out your borrowing first responsibly
Yeah.
before doing it. Hit that wall of borrowing, and then potentially leave your job if you have the cash flow.
Right. Because one could even say if you didn't have those properties, like it would have probably been tough for you to actually go play professional poker, and write your mortgage license, grow your mortgage business because you wouldn't have had that cushion, right? Because at the end of the day, you still had cash flow coming in. Like you said, you're living in one unit. You had three other properties, cash flowing at that time, so you had income to sustain your lifestyle.
Yeah, it's a good point because a lot of my peers at the time were playing professional poker as well, but that was their sole income. Like they had nothing else. So that's stressful too. I did always have the backup. I mean, not that the cash flow was super high because I only put 5 or 10% down.
Hmm.
The cash flow was lower, but I knew that I was paying down the principal every month on three
Yeah.
properties. A little bit of cash flow. I knew I was on the right track, even if my income was a little bit lower. So it was nice to have that in the back of my mind, while also like working on something else, which at the time was mortgages, and I was applying to the fire department. That was like the only job I was willing to do at that point, just because the schedule is so flexible and it's a very
Right.
exciting job. Like it's competitive to get in. So
No.
I was patient.
Okay. And now with real estate, obviously you have your three properties, right? At what point in time, because again, you have the Yale certification to study financial markets, and you're also big in stocks, a little bit of options as well. Let's speak to that a little bit. At what point in time in your life did you kind of start building that stock portfolio? And maybe let's break down some stocks as well, right? Just because that is another way of investing, just to kind of expand your portfolio, not just real estate, but at least stocks provides you a certain level of liquidity as well.
Yeah, and it's a great topic to dive into because there's so many different strategies
Hmm.
invested inside the stock market, and it's important to touch on certain ones. So I started stocks even before real estate, like maybe at 2021 or 19. Like I started dabbling in the stock market. What is it? I asked my dad. He's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
gambling, right? He lost money on Nortel like everybody else and stuff, right? So stock
Hmm.
market was taboo. But I still explored it a little bit. And like a typical 20-year-old, you're not looking at blue chips that get 10% per year. You're
Yeah.
looking at these tiny little startup, micro cap companies that you just read about on the internet and look for people's opinions on them and buy into it, and there's no profits, and they just go down to almost nothing, these penny stocks, right? So my introduction to the stock market was penny stocks, and that is like gambling. So I mean, if that's the type of market that you're in, then super speculative. And it took like losing money on several occasions to change my strategy and learn those lessons. And my investing strategy in the stock market has changed a lot over the years too, and it's a lot more conservative now. I do buy those strong blue chip companies now that have that have positive earnings, that have dividends and pay you on a regular basis. But when you don't have much money to invest, that 3% dividend seems like absolutely nothing, and it's not motivating to buy dividend paying stocks with a couple $1,000s. It's just nuts. So it's not attractive. And the problem today, a lot of people are looking for those home run investments in the stock market and crypto market. Even real estate, people are losing patience because they're watching a lot of people make money quickly in all asset classes who have a lot of experience and good strategies, and they just want to follow it, but they want to skip the homework and the research and just hit the home runs in all of these categories. So people need to slow down and kind of understand the power of compounding, and it takes time to build your net worth. You can have a portion of your portfolio that is speculative, but understand that like those investments lose quite often because those are real companies that aren't making money and need to keep getting money from investors to fund these projects or the equipment, and it's not producing profit yet. It's highly speculative.
So let's get really specific. So let's say I'm not a big stock guy myself. So starting out, I come to you, Bryan, and you understand, okay, I have cash, I have a good T4 income, and I want to start doing some conservative stocks, right? Like you said, it doesn't make sense. You don't really want to go for those home runs because you're going to end up losing money over the long term. You want to focus on compounding. What would you recommend? Like where would someone start if they're a beginner?
You buy one purchase and you keep adding to it, and that is it. You don't need to pick stocks. You don't need to do Apple, Amazon. You buy an index fund. You buy the S&P. On the Canadian side, it's not VOO. It's what is it? VTV, I think it is, or VFV rather. VFV. It's the S&P 500 index fund. You're buying 500 of the largest companies in the U.S. with one purchase and a very low management fee. And the advantage is, of course, diversification. You're owning 500 companies with a small amount of money.
Right.
So you're getting profits of all of them. You don't have to pick the individual stocks, and you don't have to invest all of your time reading the financial news on Apple and reading the earnings reports and learning who the CEO is and all the internal stuff of the company, especially when you have such a small amount of money invested. It's such a waste of your time. So you can own a lot of these big companies and ride the profits of all of them.
Right.
And then get the average market return, which, historically has averaged about 10% per year. Compound that. And then focus your efforts on how to grow your income elsewhere, because just building a portfolio of stocks or one index fund is not going to be your ticket to financial freedom on its own.
Of course.
Some of those Instagram pages will say it is. That's their whole branding, and they'll show you, $1,000 a month for 40 years equals a couple $1 million. But who knows what a couple $1 million is, and who wants to wait 40 years?
That's another thing, right? We want to live now.
Oh my God, it's insane. So it's good. It's a good part of a portfolio to have that 10% compounded. But for beginners, it just makes sense to have an index fund and not worry about stock picking and hitting the right ones and all that stuff. It's a basic, easy strategy. And then you can focus on other areas and building income streams.
Right. Now because obviously you're doing both right now. At that time you were doing both real estate and also stock. So was it once you started getting cash flow from the properties, were you then taking that cash flow and investing in the market, or vice versa? Were some of the dividends you were getting from your stocks, because you said you started that a little bit earlier, and then using that to help fund your real estate portfolio?
Good question. I realized very quickly that there's way more money in real estate for many reasons. Ideally, the leverage, the 20-to-1 leverage, when you can put 1% down, the returns are absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So that was very obvious to me versus stocks. So The plan was to buy real estate properties, and you can use your cash to kind of build it while saving for another down payment and
Right.
invest it rather than just keep it in a non-interest savings account. So my
Exactly.
stock account was used to kind of build and grow my money, which would
Mhm.
then be funneled into another down payment and then grow it again.
Right.
So
Right.
it's not like that stock portfolio just has been compounding ever since then. I would take money out and I would move it around. I'm always looking for the best opportunity, and
Right.
real estate is plan A.
Right. Okay. So Joanne, that's cool. So your stock portfolio had utility. You knew it was only there to grow or compound until you found another deal, essentially to then put into real estate. You executed that deal, and then potentially the cash from that deal will then either fund your lifestyle or go back into the market and then rinse and repeat.
Exactly. Yeah, it was used to build up to put into real estate, and especially the TFSA and the advantages that come along with that, and the
Right.
flexibility of the TFSA, not worrying about taxes. You can take the money out, put it into real estate, and then put that money right back into the TFSA the following year.
Smart, smart. And you see, and like these are the type of conversations I wish people had at the educational level, right? Whether it be university or even high school. I think university is a little bit too late. I think these type of conversations should be start having at the high school level, because just that in itself is not a process that happens overnight. You know what I mean? Um, that obviously took a couple of years before you can take a month off to Tulum, right? But those like that's a process. It needs to be rinsed, recycled, and repeated, a couple times before you can actually, okay, wow, like I have a pretty significant now real estate portfolio or a substantial liquid asset portfolio in the stock market. No, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it does take time to put that process in place, and it does take time and experience to like see how it works.
Right.
I agree with you. It should be taught at younger ages, but I think it's going to stick for certain people who are eager to learn, and it's going to click for some people.
Right.
They're just going to excel, and
Yeah.
and then other people, they're going to learn it, but it's just not going to stick. So it has to be like repetitive, not
Right.
something that you just learn once. You need to like continue absorbing that stuff.
Hmm.
That's where it gets tricky, because it seems like certain people just want it and certain people are drawn to it, and they
Hmm.
understand what money can do for you, and they want freedom. So they have a drive for it, and
Yeah.
they're passionate. And when you have that, if you notice that you have that, like that's an amazing prerequisite for becoming wealthy.
No, no, for sure. And nowhere am I even near that yet. But what I find is when I speak to a lot of individuals like you, because I have a passion for communication and speaking to individuals and asking questions, right? And getting to the nitty gritty. And I find that in this currently where we are, there's a frenzy on information. Everyone wants information, right? Podcasts, books, ebooks. Let's start a book club, right?
Yeah.
But there's never no action, right? Which I feel like then it comes entertainment, because what's the difference, right?
That's such a good point, man, because yeah, you can literally be learning about something that's a very complex, good subject, and people do it like as they're falling asleep at night in bed. And you're not just going to take action on that knowledge. It might like slowly sink in, and when you hear it 5, 10 times, it becomes part of your knowledge.
Hmm.
It's acting on it. And I've recently dropped this course called the Foundations that's focused just on like the most fundamental concepts of money and personal finance, and I broke
Yeah.
it down simple, and I condensed the course purposely because I know the statistics of how many people finish courses, and it's very, very low.
Yeah.
So I made it short, condensed, and focused on action steps. There are a
Right.
lot of action steps through it. It's just a theory component and then execution on every module. And the execution just breaks it down like this is what you need to do to like drop your expenses, raise your income, lower your debt, improve your credit score, build a savings account, and then start investing.
Right.
And it's like 29 action steps. And that was the focus. It needs to be focused on what you're going to actually do. It's not rocket science, a lot of the stuff, the material, and it's out there, but it's people need like the accountability and the guidance to like to take action and do the things that you need to do.
No, you know what? I was actually I wanted to dive really deep into the core stuff, but since you brought up, let's get into it, right? So what inspired you to even get into the education business, right? Because people don't realize education is a massive business.
Yeah. Because I've always been passionate about it, man. And that's what made the difference for me when I was younger, is that I was absorbing a lot of the material and reading a lot of books. I
Yeah.
wasn't a reader in school. Like I hated reading, but when it came to nonfiction and things that are applicable to your life that you can learn and apply, then I became obsessed. So I
Right.
realized the value of the education and applying it. And then I just realized over the years, like, this is where my mind goes. I'm watching the financial channel. I'm reading about like real estate and investing and taxes and all of the components. And I ended up just like kind of becoming like a very well-rounded person in finance, as opposed to just one little niche.
Mm-hmm.
So I understood a lot of the components, and I would have conversations with people and help them in various different scenarios with different parts of finance. And then, probably 3 years ago, I got into the one-on-one coaching where I would help people advance and build their portfolios. And that's typically for investors who are real estate focused and getting the second, third, fourth property, becoming a millionaire.
Right.
Now, the problem was, most people here in Canada need the preliminary stuff. They're not at like, the one-on-one coaching is for people who already have money, they have a good job, and they're ready for the next level.
Right.
People who needed the most education and the biggest like push forward were the ones who need to understand the fundamental stuff. So I took a step back and had said, how can I help more people on a more basic level, not talking about real estate or anything. And then, it has to be like an online sort of course where that people can go in at their own discretion and learn on their own.
Yeah.
So I built that out and focused on the basic stuff. And then, the next course will be a little more advanced than that, and
Right.
then more advanced than that. And you can start from being very bad with money, or not having the education or the people around you that taught you, and just have like a structured course, rather than, the YouTube here and then the article over here and then this blog. And it's like many different opinions, many different strategies. You're getting all kinds of stuff and people get flustered.
Yeah.
It's too much information. So I wanted to be like a central hub for financial education, Canadian specific, because that's a problem too. There's a lot of the information is American,
Right.
and there's different tax laws. There's different other laws, right?
Right.
It just doesn't always apply
Mm-hmm.
to Canada. So I wanted it to be specific and not have to worry about if this applies to, my country.
Right. No. And again, don't be afraid, because I want you to talk about it. So the More Money Club is the name of Bryan's course. So I was going through the website. There was about 6 pillars, essentially 6 or 7 pillars, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you really based it off of. Let's dive into that, because it's really about personal finance, right? So take me through it. Take me through the course as if I was in it. And what are the main modules? What are you trying to hit from start to finish to help someone essentially build their financial wealth or financial portfolio, if you want to call it?
For sure. I spent a lot of time brainstorming this and trying to, make a long list of the important things in personal finance, and,
Right.
and start to filter it out from there. What's the most important? What do people need to know very specifically that's applicable to starting to grow your wealth?
Mm-hmm.
And that brainstorming narrowed it down. And there are 6 modules, and I've put them in the right order to, from someone who's just starting out, what's the most important? Step 1. So the first module is expenses, right? The first 2 are based on cash flow. So it's expenses and income. And expenses come first because it's something that everyone can do, regardless of how much money you're making right now, is to review all of your expenditures and look for ways to drop them. That's going to improve your bottom line. Your cash flow goes up when you remove expenses that you don't need in your life.
Yeah.
And I do this even with coaching clients that have a lot of money, taking a look at their expenses. Like, wow, you see where all your money's going. It's like, this expense brings me a lot of joy. That's a good one. This one doesn't. It's not even good for my life. It's not healthy. It's not, adding to it, to my life. And that could be, Netflix, or, too much movies, or like drinking alcohol and stuff like that. You need to analyze your habits too. And I touch on the habits in there as well. So the first module is expenses, and improving your cash flow by reducing your expenses. And there's ways to do that. I give practical steps and making phone calls and stuff like that. The second one, of course, is income. That's how you improve your cash flow. You want to lower expenses, improve your income. The difference is your cash flow. So there's many ways to increase your income, and I give some strategies for doing that. Everyone has a different kind of job and career, and some people have the opportunity to just get a raise or hustle a little bit harder and increase their sales. And some people need to switch jobs completely.
Yeah.
Other people can just build a side hustle based on their passion. So it's like, that's where you need to look within and take some time to figure out where that extra income is going to come from. It's a brainstorming session, and I think you should experiment. You should try a few different things. You don't have to figure it all out.
100%, 100%. Just on that income, because I hits home because obviously both of us being mortgage professionals, that's something I've come to notice where it's like people, I find that, naturally we are creatures of habit. So once we get comfortable in a role, whether it be paying making like a 90K salary or a 100K salary, if you're never willing to look outside, people don't realize how much money they're leaving on the table. And I do this within my own family. I'll talk to my sister. My sister hustles so hard for her job, corporate, right? HR. But I'm telling her, listen, there's opportunities out here in tech or anything that will take you on, and your income would increase so significantly. But it's like this fear of the unknown, right? And it's like, but yeah, it's like income is a big thing because we need income, right?
Yeah, and one of the points that I drive home in the income module is if you want to make more money, you need to deliver more value to people. It's not a self-focused thing. How do I get more income? It's how can you help other people get the results that they want?
Right.
And regardless of the industry that you're in, if you can help them, you are going to get a higher amount of income. And yes, like these 6 modules, when you master these 6 foundations, you're going to be better with money than the majority of people on the planet.
Yeah.
And the course after this one, instead of being 6 modules, is only going to need to focus on 2, because once you master these 6, there are 2 that you still got to keep building on, and income is one of them and investments is the other. Mm-hmm. Once you master the other ones, you don't need to put much attention on them anymore. And then you just keep focusing on building income, building investments, and letting that compound and grow. And that's how you get wealthy.
Right.
So beyond the income part, the 3rd module is debt. So now we've increased our cash flow by reducing expenses and increasing income. Where does that extra money go? It doesn't fund your lifestyle. We're not even near that point yet. So it pays down debt. If you have any high interest debt, that's where the cash flow needs to go. You don't start investing yet, especially if you have like credit card debt. The interest rates are like 20%.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a guaranteed 20% in the markets. So hammering down credit card debt is a fantastic way to build your wealth and get rid of that high interest debt. So there's strategies for like ranking your debts and all that stuff and paying that down. And once you've done that, the 4th module is credit, which is tied to debt. That's, improving your credit score, because when you start learning about investments and stuff like that, credit's very important. That's just borrowing power, your worthiness. So there's strategies and action steps for improving your credit score and explaining what kind of range you need to be in for the future. Mm-hmm. And then once you've gotten your credit score to a good point and you can continue working on that, you build an appropriate amount of savings. And that's just to kind of give you an emergency fund to fund things, unexpected events, which is a pretty simple module, but it's important. And then the last one is investments. And that's where I touch on getting involved in, say, index funds and starting to build a portfolio, how to open a trading account, the difference between TFSA and RRSP, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Touches on taxes, but I didn't want to get too deep into topics like taxes or inflation or stuff like that. There's a lot of topics that I had to remove from the program just to keep it condensed.
Yeah.
Right? So it ends with the investments. And then I think at the end of that, you can just put more attention to whatever modules need the most attention for you.
That's good. And when that launched, the More Money Club?
That was the start of this year, 2022, just last month, right? More Money Club is the brand. My coaching is under that brand. All the courses, right? This foundation course was the basic personal finance course.
No, I would definitely, I took a sweep through it. I would definitely recommend anyone who's on right now, again, or anyone who's on the replay, definitely go check it out, because some of the points that you're talking about, some of the things that you're hitting home in terms of cash flow, like, to be honest, I have a 4-year degree. Never once have I ever talked about cash flow until I took it upon myself, right? And studied these different financial terms, right? So when we have individuals like Bryan out here in the market providing these courses and things like this and willing to educate and take the time, you want to capitalize on it.
Yeah, the big things were to make it Canadian specific. So if if you're in Canada, you can trust that. And the theory behind More Money Club is to take your wealth as far as you want to go. And this is step one. It's not going to teach you everything, but it's going to give you those core concepts that you're going to use basically for the rest of your life, spending less than you earn and all that kind of stuff. And then you can take the next courses, and then there's one-on-one coaching. There's a few products that we have to just help you get past those hurdles and obstacles and scale your wealth faster.
No, most definitely. Most definitely. One topic I did, it's funny because I wanted to talk about this before, but we jumped into your course, right? But one thing I'm starting to get passionate about in terms of investing is multifamilies and commercials, right? I want to touch about briefly because I know that's a little bit more advanced or experienced, but you mentioned that now you're doing a little bit bigger projects now, right? Into the small multifamily family space and commercial. What are your thoughts on it right now in I guess in Southern Ontario, right? I feel like single family home investing, anything under, I feel like a duplex or even a triplex, it's tough with the price points, right? Is that kind of what ignited your passion to get out of the residential space because of you're a cash flow investor?
It wasn't just price. It's a more advanced type of investing, and as my skills got better, it was always the idea was to get into like apartment buildings and much bigger projects than just like duplexes, right? So it was part of the process. But to your point, it used to just be like condos won't cash flow just because of maintenance fees and stuff. Then went to like townhouses. Then it went to just like detached single family homes. They don't cash flow. Now duplexes are like tough to cash flow, especially when you incorporate expenses like vacancy management and repairs. A lot of people leave out. Probably not cash flowing in many cities in Southern Ontario. So you got to go higher than that. So then, there's a lot of competition there too because of the price range, and investing is becoming a lot more common for, average people to buy a second home and rent it out. So there's a lot of competition on duplexes and triplexes, like crazy multiple offers. So once you go above 4 units and get into the commercial lending space, it changes a little bit. There's less competition. It's tougher, more savvy competition, but it's a different game, and they value properties differently. It's a more advanced strategy, and I was excited about that because you can help determine the value of the building based on your efforts running the property like a business, as opposed to buying a duplex and just waiting for it to go up based on the comparables on that street. That's out of your control, right? So raising the rent roll doesn't translate into a higher purchase price for a duplex the way it does on a sixplex.
Where are you right now focused on in terms of looking at your multi-units and your commercial deals? Like what specific regions in Ontario?
I still like the Niagara region. There's opportunities in the smaller towns in the Niagara region. I like north of Toronto, Bruce Grey County up there, heading up towards like Lake Huron and Georgia Bay. There's some smaller towns there. I bought a solid building. Windsor is super hot. I was buying Windsor last year. It just exploded so fast. But you kind of have to go outside of the bigger urban centers if you want cash flow at this point. It's changed so quickly how quick like it expanded from Toronto. It just blew up outwards and then hit all the smaller cities that are following the same path in terms of prices. And then if you go to Northern Ontario, Sudbury, Ste. Marie, and places like that, the prices are really, really low. But then you're getting into fully remote investing. So you got to be confident that you can run a business completely remotely. You need a strong team in place.
Right. It's like I have a few investors that I work with that are heavy in that Sudbury North Bay area, and one of just side comment, but one of their biggest complaints is I find they have a lot of like tenancy issues, right? In terms of quality of tenants, is that something that's come up before?
Yeah, I'm not in that far north yet. I've been looking for a long time, but I mean, even when I started investing in St. Catharines in like 2013 or so, it was kind of like that, right? You would get a lot of lower income tenants. There's not a ton of big jobs out there. It's not a white collar city.
Definitely not.
Right. So you get different tenants, and people are losing their jobs more often and stuff, and you run into income issues and tenant problems. So that's definitely part of the differences in going remotely like that.
Right. No, 2013 was, believe it or not, I'm actually from St. Catharines. I grew up there.
Really?
Yeah, like 22 years, went to Brock University and everything like that. So I'm in Mississauga now. I'm in the GTA. But it's funny, we purchased a property a year, no, just under 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, in the north end of St. Catharines, like closer to like Port Dalhousie.
Yeah.
Um, we purchased it for about 520, 520, 530. And it's funny, today we're taking a HELOC on it.
Yeah.
Um, and it got appraised at the bank for 845. I was like, what is going on?
Wow. 1 year later, is that what you said?
A year, just under 2 years.
Oh man.
And this is St. Catharines.
Yeah, the north end of St. Catharines exploded a lot higher than sort of central and the other areas too.
Yeah, 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 like downtown St. Catharines.
That desirable area. I bought like a fourplex there in 20, was it 13 or 14? I think it was 13 or 14. A fourplex, and it was 430 at the time. And I mean, it appreciated slowly, but the cash flow was amazing. It was like over 1,000 a month, right? Right from the beginning,
Right.
all the expenses. And I just refinanced it. I was posting about it yesterday. Came in at $1 million, no problem.
Holy crap.
Yeah, yeah, and I think even that's low. So, I mean, it's been a crazy decade to invest in real estate,
For sure.
and we're very fortunate, myself included, of course. I did see the value in real estate and I saw how to make money,
Yeah.
but this was not part of the plan. I didn't expect to triple my home values.
No, I don't think no one could have expected this, right?
But you don't need to triple your home values to do really, really well, right?
No.
That's why I advocate focusing on cash flow first. The appreciation is a bonus. Try invest in good areas that will, experience that appreciation. But cash flow is key, especially right now because prices are so hot. I think we're a little top heavy in the market right now, so people need to be cautious. It's getting irrational the way people are treating properties.
Right, because now and I was actually watching your story, and I agree with you 100%. Where it's very speculative now, right? Like I find like people are just buying to buy,
Yeah.
and it's a little bit scary because I think it's a little bit crazy, right? Do you foresee a cooling? I know this is tough because everyone always asks this question, right? Personally, I don't believe real estate is going to crash, but that's just me. What do I know? Are you expecting this to continue?
So over the course of my career, man, there's always been people saying that it's time to correct, right? And I was never on board with it. I was like, not only are the fundamentals on our side and stuff like that, but it's not overheated. We're like growing at a modest 5%, 6% per year. That's natural. In the past few years, it really accelerated, and that's highly because of printing money and low interest rates and stuff like that.
Right.
But now, man, in the past like 6 months or so, like the level of of exuberance in the market and irrational buying makes me actually think it's going to cool off. Like we're probably pretty close to it. And I was never on board with this before. Like I said, I was just like, oh, we don't know which way, but I'm more cautious than ever right now. Cash is more important than ever right now. You're not going to expect to get returns anywhere near where they have been for the past few years, or comparing decade over decade.
No, never.
Unless inflation stays rampant and gets way out of control. If prices of everything are going up, real estate will follow with it. But if they cool that down and bring inflation down and slowly, gradually increase interest rates, which they're planning to do, I think the rising of interest rates are going to have a big impact on the real estate market.
Yeah.
Even when they just start doing it, say it's a quarter point next month. Not that the quarter point makes a gigantic difference right away in buying power,
right?
But it changed the mentality and the fear and the news articles that keep coming out saying rates started, right? It's not a theory anymore. They started, and it might be again next meeting and again the next meeting, and that's going to scare people and play into the psychology. And it's going to affect supply and demand. It's going to slow down the people that are irrational right now because prices aren't increasing by 2% per month anymore. So there's going to be a lot of investors like, whoa, and home buyers like, I'm going to wait this out and see. Yeah. And then on the selling side, there's no supply on the market. So I know there's a lot of people that are thinking about selling, but they're just holding because properties go up on a monthly basis. But once that tapers and rates start going up, there will probably be a lot of people like, okay, now is the time to unload my property.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for a long time. Now is the time to really capitalize. because of potential fear. And
Right.
then all of those shifts in the buying and selling will translate into lower prices. That's what I think.
Yeah. Yeah, man, it's just it's tough, right? Because how can this keep up, right? These 18, 22, 30% returns in some of these cities is it's crazy, to be honest with you. It's just insane.
Truly, I hope that it just flattens out, cools off, and like just reaches a normal level and we go
Yeah,
back to a balanced market and stuff. I hope that's what happens. My
right.
biggest business is investing in real estate. So it's not like I'm selling everything,
Exactly.
planning for it to go down. I'm just very cautious and I'm playing both sides here. I did
Right.
sell a couple of my weakest performing properties last year because they
Hmm.
don't cash flow at current valuations anymore.
Right.
Take those off the books and put it into better projects. That's just reallocating capital.
Right.
I'm preparing myself in case we do have a correction because that's the time to buy.
Yeah,
I want to be liquid. I want to be liquid for
exactly.
buying opportunities. I don't want to be cash locked, equity locked because I bought everything right now at this point.
Right. No, no. And it wouldn't make any sense because, like, again, you're coming from an investor standpoint. The numbers have to make sense. You're not just going to buy for the sake of buying a property or FOMO or something like that.
Exactly.
So what's just it's almost time. I know you're a busy guy. So we'll finish off with this. What's next for Bryan? I want to what's coming up in the future. I know a lot of people are thinking of investing in the States. Are you thinking of just continuing the commercial route and investing more into apartment buildings, syndications? What's next for you?
Yeah, man. It's on the business side, it's going to be bigger projects, more of those like multifamily commercial projects that have value add. I like to go into properties and think, how can we change either the layout of certain units or add units or
Hmm.
utilize like basement space or
Yeah.
development, stuff like that, going through permits with the city, that kind of stuff, changing the use of buildings. So that's more exciting to me. Of course, building the education business, that's going to that I want that grow that into a large company. So that's going to mean taking some time away from real estate and focusing on the education on more money club. And outside of that, like on a personal level, man, it's not all about like business growth and next level and how do I get more money. So like I want to slow down. It was always about financial independence for me, retiring at a young age and being able to live the lifestyle that I want. And that's like, travel and freedom and not being addicted to my phone and my computer because people need my attention. So
Yeah.
to get to that point of freedom, you need to outsource a lot of things. You need to put systems in place, and you need to potentially dial back on these gigantic, like financial goals, right? Because that's at a certain point when you're making a lot of money or you have a high net worth, it starts to diminish. And unless you're extremely passionate about what you do, and when you think about your ideal lifestyle, all you want to do is just build your business. That's cool, then build your business. But I
Right.
have other passions and interests that I want to incorporate in my life as well beyond business. So, uh,
Yeah.
to answer your question, of course, build into larger real estate, grow the education company, and help more people achieve their dreams,
Hmm.
and live the lifestyle that I want at a young age, and do all the things while I'm in my 30s and 40s, and still have the money flowing in from multiple sources while
Yeah.
still continuing to learn. I need that. I need that feeling of productivity, regardless if I'm traveling or not. I need the stimulation and growth
Of course.
only professionally, but then I wanted to enjoy life and spend time with people and stuff.
Right. Remember what I called you? The king of work-life balance, man. There it is.
That's it, man. That is important. But I mean, to achieve work-life balance, it's important to notice that you gotta be off balance in the beginning, right? You
For
gotta be
sure.
focused on work
Yeah.
and growing, because those early years really start to show up in
Yeah.
later years. So I don't really believe in doing the work-life balance too early.
Too early. No, because you have to start from somewhere, right? Like you said, you have to start from somewhere.
Yeah, you got to grind for a bit, but if you grind hard for a few years, even if it's like 3 to 5 years, you can really change. The out. You could change the way that your life kind of plays out.
No, most definitely. So before I let you go, man, first of all, thank you for hopping on. I want to give you the last few words. How can people get in contact with you? Let them know in terms of where can they go to, if they're interested in getting more information about the More Money Club and the movement and the education that you're starting, or even want one-on-one consulting. How can they get in contact with you?
The best way is Instagram. It looks like the tag is right there at Bryan J. Bouchard. You can just reach out to me. I have a link tree there for coaching consultations, for the course, for mortgage consultations. You can DM me with your questions or scenarios. I have these conversations like all day long, but Instagram is where I spend most of my time on social media. happy to, answer questions or direct people just based on where you are financially.
Beautiful. There is. Again, thank you, Bryan. I'm sure we're having many more conversations. I learned a lot, honestly. And man, you're a beast in what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing on social media, because listen, you didn't know who I was until I reached out to you, right? But people are watching what you're doing and are motivated and passionate about it. So you're definitely, improving other people's lives, whether you know it or not.
Man, that means a lot, man. Super grateful to hear that. And this was a pleasure. The time flew by. And I'm happy to do this at any time, man. Thank you very much.
Awesome. There you have it, guys. Episode 1 of Live with CK the Broker. Stay tuned next week. We got another big real estate investor. Adios.
Have a good night.